Did you pick up 2 handouts on your way in? Anybody need the handouts? Cool. All right. So one is the usual handout, which we don't need to talk about. The other is the promised handout about the final. So the final for this course is on Monday, May 13th at 11:30 over in Hearst Gym in one of those lovely unventilated rooms. Hopefully the heat wave will be over by then. We'll be back to our usual foggy pattern, so it'll be cool at 11:30. And only miserable. And we're on the first day, so there's only going to be 3 hours worth of accumulated sweat and smell in that room when we get to it, so that's good. Not saying, just saying. Yeah. So the run-of-the-mill stuff on the final is just as per usual for me. You don't need blue books, green books, red books, yellow books, whatever color they are these days. Bring something to write with. Bring a timepiece other than your cell phone. So old people like me have watches. I don't know if you understand this. So this is something you strap it on your arm, and it tells the time. Yeah, well, there you go. Figure out what you can do. We will write the time on the board as we usually do, but I don't think there's a clock that you can see in 220 Hearst. So that's why I want you to have a timepiece of some sort. All right, on the back side is the comprehensive essay question. So this is exactly the question that you will get on Monday, May 13th. We distribute it to you in advance so that you have plenty of time to think about what it is that you want to include. The way I set it up this time was I got very bored with the old essay questions. So if you look at the old final essay questions, if you've done that, you saw there were like 16 of them were about economic growth, and I was just like, can't do that again. And so I decided to get creative, and since I had a book proposal on my desk that I'm supposed to look at and review, I decided to give you a shot at being a textbook author too. And so the setup here is that you've decided to write a new economic history textbook, and in order to get yourself a publisher, what you have to do when you decide you want to write a textbook is you put together some preliminary materials that are then mailed around the country to people like me who read them and give back information to the editors about whether or not this is a worthy project and whether they should go forward and whether anybody would adopt this textbook and whether it's worth doing and so on and so forth. So your task is to write up a good thorough outline for chapter 1, which is the introductory chapter, which sort of lays out what the whole course is about. You have a little teaser about why people should study economic history, what are the tools and the methods and so on that we use, what are the big topics, the themes that we hit on in terms of topics, what's the applicability. So the requisite part of the first chapter is all, the chapter you never read is always the why should somebody ever study this course. So what's the payoff from having taken a course in economic history? And then we want you to go back and choose from each of your major sections, 1, 2, 3, and 4, choose one minor section to flesh out. So that's the setup. Do y'all have any questions about the setup? I'll ask you again on Thursday. Chris? I mean, actually, right, yes. So part 2 down here is from each of the major sections, 1, 2, 3, and 4, choose a minor section of 1 to 3 paragraphs that you actually write out. We anticipate it's about an hour-long writing project. So, no. Questions? Ian? No, Colin. Sorry. Wrong Ian. No. So no early submissions. These have to be handwritten during the test and turned in. Other questions? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's an interesting question. So how different should it be from Walter Walker? I guess it should. I mean, it should be a proposal that reflects this course. So I hadn't thought about that. That's an interesting question. Yeah, not too much. No, the textbook does not start out by focusing on methods. Yeah. And the textbook doesn't do much. They've added more over the years because I keep prodding them, but they don't do much on inequities, particularly in the first chapter. Leah. Yep. 4x6 card can be double-sided. Needs to be handwritten. So I want to get away from the 2-point font version. So, other questions? All right, you'll have another shot at asking questions on Thursday. That's the plan. And then there's always Piazza. Piazza is also good for, as you're studying, I've always thought that Piazza would be a good thing for posting things like, I was reading this journal article or reader article, and my takeaway from this article is such and so. Do you all agree, or do you have a different takeaway? And so the idea of Piazza is supposed to be that for people who don't have study groups, that it helps you to form a virtual study group. Posts like that I'm not going to respond to. So posts that are clearly sort of soliciting feedback from each other are posts that we'll just let go and won't chime in. But feel free to use it that way. Piazza got a lot more traffic in Econ 1, which is understandable because they don't know very many other people yet. You all know plenty of other people, so that may be part of why Piazza doesn't get as much traffic. Or I'm just totally transparent and clear in this course. All right, anything else before we get started? In theory, we got evaluations at 3:15, but the person who's doing them, who is anonymous to me, which is not supposed to be the case, never communicated to me that they were coming. So if nobody shows up at 3:15, we go till 3:30. And if somebody shows up, you guys will. Well, I sent Alyssa an email about 1:30 and said, I haven't got a clue if anyone's actually coming. So, alrighty. So we ended on Tuesday with our timeline on the board. One of my tasks is to patch that, to put it on the website somehow. I haven't done that yet. I did figure out how to get the pictures off my cell phone, though. That's the first try. All right, so more immigration facts. Then we're going to talk about Feliciano's article, and then we're going to talk about how we think about immigration both today and in the past. I expect that's as far as I'll get by 3:15. My expectation is that the slides that I posted for today actually carry me through most of Thursday. So all I need to add on Thursday is my summing up the class slide. So what you've got here is what we've got in terms of content for the rest of the semester. All right, here we go. I showed you this picture on last time. So the chart on the right, which is from the handout from last week, shows you the numbers of immigrants 1820 to 2010. Numbers of immigrants are persons obtaining legal permanent resident status. It's not, they don't have a measure of immigrant per se, but they do have this measure of who's obtained legal permanent resident status. The spike here in the later years, where's my thing? I think that's why I have the screen. There. This spike is associated with welfare reform. Try it again. Immigration reform of 1986, when there was an amnesty period, so anybody who'd been in the country since 82 could come forward and request legal permanent residency status, even if they had not been documented in the first place. The Table 1 from last time takes these numbers and puts them into a little bit of perspective here and there. So on the one hand, we've got the number of immigrants relative to the total population. That's in the middle column. And then I've got in the far right-hand column, immigration's share of population growth. What's interesting is that the share of the population is relatively small. So the number of immigrants per year relative to the total population, this is per 1,000, is 3.5. That's comparable to, let's see, I have to go all the way back here to the 1820s and 1830s to find a number before the immigration restrictions begin that is comparable to what we see today. So the 3.4 and 3.5 from the 90s and the aughts, those are larger numbers than we've had since the immigration restrictions went into place in the 1920s, but they're smaller than the share of immigrants into the share of immigrants is the share of the population in the pre-restricted years, so in the years before the 1920s restrictions. We're also, in terms of the shares of population growth, now about, I'm going to call that a third, between a third and 2/5 of the population growth in the United States is due to immigration as opposed to natural population growth. That number, a third or so, comparable to the teens, the aughts a century ago, comparable to what we had in the late 19th century. So immigrants as a share of total population, smaller than it was in the pre-restricted era, so the pre-1920s era, but as a share of population growth, immigration is contributing as much to the total population growth now as it was in the 19th century. That's a reflection of the smaller family sizes today relative to the past. People always want to know about the undocumented as well as the documented or legal permanent residents, and so I tried to find some data for you yesterday on all of this stuff. A slight rant, if you don't mind. There is this wonderful document called the Statistical Abstract, and the Statistical Abstract is this compendium of 1,000 or more tables that pulls together information from any number of government sources and provides you with lots of data. Due to congressional budget cuts, they no longer produce the Statistical Abstract. So the last version came out a year and a half ago, and so now when you want updated data, you have to figure out which website, say Department of Homeland Security, you go to for that particular piece of data, and then where on their completely impenetrable website that data might be located. So what used to take me a few hours took me all day yesterday to update like 5 tables on this thing. Sam? Okay. So here's the thing down here. So these data on the undocumented are from the Pew Hispanic Center, which is part of the Pew Research Fund. So if you listen to NPR, they're always talking about funding from the Pew Research Fund. So I don't know who Pew was, but they gave money. And what the researchers at the Pew Foundation do is they use the Current Population Survey. The Current Population Survey is the source of the information for the unemployment rate. So when we talk about the unemployment rate and how there's this phone survey that takes place in the week that includes the 15th of the month in which they call 65,000 households, and they ask these households a series of questions, and from that series of questions they discern whether or not individuals are employed, unemployed, or out of the labor force. There's a larger survey, a larger sample that they do every year in March, and it's called the March Supplement. And in the March Supplement, they ask a longer series of questions, and with those questions, they're able to try to tease out of that people who are in the country without papers. Confidence interval doesn't indicate it's a regression, but indicates that it's an estimate. So because this is a survey of 65,000 households and not all 120 million households, and because the number of households in which there's a report of somebody who's undocumented is a smaller share even than that, so then there's a standard error around each of these things, standard deviation. All right, so these are estimates from the Pew Center on the estimates of the U.S. unauthorized immigrant population. So the data they had that I got first was 2000 to 2010. The crisis begins basically around here. And so you can see I'm going to show you some other data in just a minute that show the tie of immigration to employment. So that when employment opportunities went down, the estimates are that undocumented migration went down as well. Let me show you some more numbers on this stuff. Estimates again from the Pew Center on the foreign-born population in the United States in 2010. So this is from a similar source. So now they're asking about other people in the United States in 2010 who are foreign-born. What do we know about that group? 37% were naturalized citizens, 31% legal permanent residents, 4% legal temporary migrants. So that's when I talked about we don't call them guest workers, but basically the guest workers for agriculture, and about 28% unauthorized immigrants. Border apprehensions. So the Department of Homeland Security uses the border apprehensions as a proxy for how large the unauthorized or undocumented migrant flow is into the United States. Now, almost all of these apprehensions are at the southwest border. The 97% of the apprehensions measured here are at the Mexico border. The other 3%, and in some years 1 to 2%, are either the coasts or the Canadian border. So this is almost entirely measured at the southwest border. Of those who are apprehended, 90% are from Mexico. So here shows the Border Patrol apprehensions, starts in 1970, goes through to 2010, and you can see a combination. There's a couple of things that are going to be reflected here. One is going to be economic conditions. And so when it's difficult to find a job in the United States, the apprehensions are going to go down because fewer people are going to cross the borders. For those of you who pay attention to things like how many people are standing outside Home Depot or Ace Hardware at 7 o'clock in the morning, there have been far fewer of those men standing outside Home Depot and Ace Hardware at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday or on a weekday over the last, what year are we in now, 2013, over the last 6 years than there were from 2000 to 2007. So the numbers of men who were, you have to get up by 7 to see the large, right? So this may be out of your purview, just trust me on this one. So get up at 7, see a different sample than you see at 10 or 11 or 12 by the time you roll out of bed on a weekend. But numbers of people standing outside Home Depot much smaller today than they were before the bust. So you can see that here. The other thing that this is going to reflect is it's going to reflect the, what's the word that I want? Tightness is the word that's coming to mind. How much money is being given to border authorities, right? So how tight they are in terms of apprehensions. What's the word that I want? I don't want the word tight. Strict, stringent, yeah, nasty, whatever. So it's like any sort of statistic. You're getting a combination of the occurrences and of the reporting through, in this case, apprehensions. What's interesting is to look at border apprehensions and link that to employment. So this chart is from an organization, migrationinformation.org, and it's simply what we would call an ocular regression. So you just get to look at it and see if you think there'd be a correlation there. The dashed line is apprehensions. The solid blue line is employment, and that tries to tease out at least half of that piece. So one half is how much money and how much they are enforcing the border laws, and the second half is what's the pull factor in terms of people coming into the country. Sam? Yeah. Well, doesn't reflect the races. It's almost all of this is the border with Mexico, right? So it's 97 to 98% is the border with Mexico. So just start from that. So just ignore Canada and ignore the oceans, right? So any fluctuation you see there comes from Mexico border. Okay. Just stopped. Just who's stopped and not allowed to cross the border. Okay. So it could be that people are apprehended as they come through. They come in through the border authorities, when they stop you and want to see your passport, or it could be they're running over where there's now a fence. So it's either of those things, but it's apprehensions. That has nothing, doesn't tell you anything about what happens to the individuals once they're apprehended, but it's a measure of people without papers who are caught by border control. And so that's why I'm saying you have to make an assumption about how tight, how stringent, how effective border control is, right? So if the percentage of people who are coming across the border without papers who are caught changes over time, that's going to affect the apprehensions. So if we assume that they're catching the same percentage of people who are coming over the border, then apprehensions would be a reasonable proxy for the number who are coming over the border. Yeah. So the numbers here in terms of apprehensions is not the interesting piece. The temporal pattern is the interesting piece. And the argument is particularly seen here in the 2001 to 2008 period and the apparent tight correlation between apprehensions and employment. Okay. Let's do some other stuff. Now, we had a graph earlier in the semester where the foreign-born lived in 1880. The green was no foreign-born in the 1880 census. The darker the county, the more foreign-born there were in the 1880 census, and with 30% or over in the darkest counties here. So that was 1880. Here's 2000, again by county. The darker the county, the higher the share of foreign-born in the population of that county. I could not find, despite my long hours of trying, an update for this by county, and I didn't have the patience to download the data and generate the graph myself. That was not going to happen. But so we can compare 1880 and 2000. There's 2000. There's 1880. There's 2000. There's 1880. There's 2000. So what's the difference between 1880 and 2000? Right, so much fewer. So now much fewer. That's terrible. Far fewer foreign-born as a share of the population in the upper Midwest than was the case in the 1880s. The South, still, with the exception of places like, let's see, this Atlanta or the Research Triangle, the South, whoops, wrong way, still looks pretty much like 1880. Yeah, and there is some. Okay, what about 2010? 2010, I could get it by state, but I couldn't get it by county. So we can look by state, but not by county. And here, so this is for 2010. The share of the population that's foreign-born, 20% or higher is the darkest color, which is California, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Less than 5% is the sort of yellowy shade there. So now I'm going to go 2010 to 2000. So there's 2000. What's nice about the county is that you can see that even in Texas, that there's a big difference between border counties and counties in the heart of Texas. California, difference between the northern California counties and the rest of California. Arizona, southern counties and the northern counties of Arizona. We can't pick that up as much with the state results, but I couldn't find the county map. And I already did my rant, so I won't do my rant again. Okay, so that's foreign-born population as a share of state population, so you get quite a variation in that picture. I have county maps also from 2000, which would have been wonderful to update. Couldn't, but let's just look at them for kicks. This is foreign-born from Mexico by county in 2010. If we had this for 2000, this is for 2000. If I've been able to find the data for 2010, you'll see more of a move north. So more migration away from just the borders over the last 10 years. This is the foreign-born from India in the population by county. The legend is changing. So the darkest box here is 2-something to 6%. The darkest box for Mexico is 20 to 37%. So the legend is changing. But here you can see where immigrants from India are most likely, or where they're a larger share of the total population. So what am I getting here? Over here near New York and so on. Sort of scattered around here. There's Atlanta again. Here's the Research Triangle. Here's Chicago. What's that? Dallas-Fort Worth? Yeah. Houston? What's this one? Austin. Oh, yes. Austin. And that's yes. Surrounded, though. Anyway, California and Washington. There you go. Montana. No. I'm not sure where you're getting Montana. This one's Montana. How about Wyoming? Yeah. Okay. And this is foreign-born from China by county in 2000. So here, the pink, right, where's the pink box? Where's the pink box? Where's the pink box? Oh, there it is. Here we are. So we got San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Alameda counties. Some of you who have grown up in this environment will leave and go this way when you graduate. It's a different world. Yeah. It's a different world out there. So just be ready. All right, sources of immigrants. I talked about this table without showing it to you on Tuesday, and pointed out from table 2 that the sources have shifted away from Europe and towards more towards Mexico and Asia. So we looked at this on Thursday. Education and earnings vary. So this is an older study. This is something that David Card, one of our colleagues, did some time ago, and looks at education and earnings using a data set from 1994 to 1996. Would have loved to have updated it. Spent too many hours trying to update all these other charts. Didn't do it. First two columns are showing you the number of years of education completed, and it's comparing the immigrant and second generation. Now, definition of second generation here, bless you. Second generation is the first generation to be born in the U.S. Okay, so the immigrant is the person who was born abroad, and then the second, I don't know who the first generation, there's no first generation, and then the second generation are the children of people who are born abroad. Every time I've taught this course, I have asked in the room, how do you define second generation? And there are two different definitions, and usually the room splits about 50-50. And about half of you define second generation as being the children of immigrants, and about half of you define second generation as being basically the grandchildren, so that your parents were born here, and you were born here. So I'm telling you, for this paper, second generation means the first generation to be born in the United States. And the last two columns are looking at weekly wage in 1994, $96. And the point here, there's 2 points. One is to compare the native born versus the other regions. And so in terms of education, native born average years of education completed 13.0 years for men, so that's 1 year of college, 12.9 years for women. That's comparable with immigrants from Europe and the United Kingdom. It's comparable with immigrants from the Caribbean and Africa. It's somewhat comparable, a little lower than immigrants from Asia. And the big distinction here, which is why we have Feliciano's article to look at, is immigrants from Mexico, Central and South America. Patrick. Yes. Which are your apples and oranges? So what it's doing is it's comparing country to country without giving you any explanation whatsoever as to why those differences exist. And that's one of the reasons I like the Feliciano article, is that she compares the educational attainment not only with educational attainment here in the United States, but with educational attainment in the sending country, which in our case is going to be Mexico. Because what this chart doesn't say to you is 9.4 years, is that higher than the norm, or is that lower than the norm for the sending country? Right? And from the Feliciano article, we know it's going to be higher than the norm, because that's one of the results. Okay, so one thing is to compare the native born and then with each of those groups. And then the second piece that's to be noticed